I grew up in a council estate in Dublin, and the norm there was either get involved in drink, drugs, crime, or go to prison. You were lucky to even get a basic job. You never heard about business. There was no one in that area or in the flats that was successful business people, involved in business in any way, shape or form. And you definitely didn't hear about anyone building anything from scratch and, making it successful. If you even spoke about trying to build something, dreaming bigger, anything of that sort, you'd be laughed at. The idea of university in itself was laughed at, which is crazy. But since then, I've built a 25 luxury Airbnb property portfolio across the UAE and the UK. But none of that came from luck. It came from pressure, failure, and to be honest, having no other option. So where I'm from, people don't dream big. Like I said, the idea of wanting more for yourself was laughed at. It was just not possible to us. Or that's what we were at least told to believe. And it wasn't because people weren't capable. There was more than enough capability in a lot of people in that area. But it was just because no one showed you that it was actually possible, or even how it was possible. No one knew. I grew up seeing houses being raided, people being arrested, crazy things, to be honest. That was the norm. And I know for most people, you're going to think that's not normal, but that was the norm for us. That's what we saw on most days. And from a young age, I always knew I wanted more. I wanted more in my life. I wanted more from my future family. I just knew I wanted more. That area made me who I am today. The lessons I learned, how I grew up, everything about it. I wouldn't change it for the world. However, I always knew I wanted more. I always knew I was destined for more. Even as a kid, I was obsessed with money. Like, I was looking for any way to make money. I was playing card games with people like twice my age, just to beat them in the card games and then to make money. I was selling toys to make money. I was doing anything I could to make money. So as long as I can remember, I've been entrepreneurial and just obsessed with making money. And that wasn't a bad thing for me. It was just we had no money and I always wanted more money. At the time, it wasn't to buy luxurious things, I go shopping or anything like that. It was actually just to buy stuff for myself, like sweets in the shop, and to be able to get food for myself that I wanted at any time. Get jellies and sweets. I was doing all of this at like 5 or 6 years old. The card games, selling toys, all of that. I was only a kid. But like I said, I was just obsessed with making money and wanting more. But growing up wasn't easy. I got to a certain stage where I was bullied for many years. There's people that actually bullied me. Now looking back, probably should have just slapped that head in, which I would do now, obviously, but at that time I was such low confidence. I was in a very bad place in life. And the thing about Dublin, still to this day, if you try to do something different, you're ridiculed or bullied or looked at strangely. If you try to do something outside of the norm or outside of the box, people ridicule you, they laugh at you, just pure ignorance. And back then I started making YouTube videos to try to express myself. It was something I found probably back in 2012, before YouTube was even a thing in Ireland. I started making vlogs, I started making videos. It was just something as a kid that I found that I was passionate about and I loved to do it. And instead of support, I got abuse. It's mad looking back now, the YouTube videos I make now, there would have been people who would have laughed at them back then that now support me. It all comes full circle. And to be honest, it got so bad I stopped going to school. People in Ireland will know what secondary school is. For the first and second year of secondary school for me, I missed probably like 300 days or more. I didn't even go to school because it got that bad. And I locked myself in my room for months. I literally became a recluse. I became suicidal. I was depressed beyond belief. And I started going to like a mental health clinic and speaking to mental health psychiatric nurses as well, to try to get me back to some sort of normality. And that was the first time I felt what actual depression and loneliness and all of that felt like. Even though I had my ma and she was trying to do as much as she could to support me and help me, I just couldn't get out of that rut because I was even fearful to go outside because of the abuse and hate I was getting. The only thing that could pull me out of that was martial arts. That's why martial arts has such a big place in my life still to this day. It will always have a big place in my life because it's pulled me out of the worst ruts in my life you could possibly imagine. And where I'm from, you need to know how to fight. It's as simple as everyone fights, everyone gets into scrap. If you don't know how to fight or you're scared to fight, you're going to be found out very quickly. But the thing about martial arts, it gave me something different. It gave me structure, discipline, and control. It taught me how to take all of that emotion, anger, sadness, all of that, and turn it into something productive. And that mindset is what built everything later. 100%. Everything I learned through martial arts is what made me the businessman I am today. So fast forward a little bit into school. I decided I wanted to put everything into school. I actually wanted to make something myself. I wanted to go to college, be the first one in my family, in my area, to go to university and get a degree. And my choice was computer science. And the reason for that was I started getting into computer programming, coding games, coding apps, and I started selling them to people as well. I sold games on the App Store. I started selling websites to businesses, again, back in 2013, 2012. This was something, again, I found very passionate about and I just put everything into it. So when I was in school, I started putting a lot of time into my studies and focusing on getting good results. And my studies were doing really well in general. I wasn't an A student, but I put a lot of work in, and as a result, I got a good output. But again, my focus was mainly on computer programming, building things, trying to create a business and create monetization out of my skills of computer programming. And I was winning many competitions. I was winning the BT Young Scientist, for people who know about that in Ireland. I was winning, local competitions, programming competitions all over Ireland. I was winning so many competitions. And as a result, I was getting a very good name for myself in that industry. I was getting a very good name for the school that I was in as well. So when I was finishing school, I decided, this is it, I'm gonna go and do computer science. And I actually got accepted into university. Even though I failed one subject, I still got accepted into university for computer science. And I done 1 year of that. I went to do my second year and I just all collapsed. It all came crumbling down. Life came too much too soon, because I finished school when I was only 16. I was in my fourth year of university at 17. It was all too much too soon for me. I couldn't handle the stress, the pressure, and all of the difficult subjects. So I dropped out. And that was a major point in my life, because it was a very hard decision. It was something I knew I wanted to do. And again, the only thing I knew to go back to at that stage was martial arts. I started putting all my time and energy back into martial arts and training relentlessly and getting more skill and more skill. And to be honest, it was hard to tell people, because I felt like a failure. I felt like there was so much pressure on me to do well, not only for myself, but for my family, for my area, for everyone. It was really tough, to be honest, dropping out after putting so much work into it. But again, I just went back to martial arts. And at that time, I was actually working in Deliveroo as a Deliveroo driver. And I was also working in Belgium, which is a Mexican burrito bar. I was working in there as a kitchen porter and then eventually a chef. So I started working in there to make some money, keep myself afloat. But again, my mom was still funding my life at that time. She was giving me bus fare to training. She was paying for my training. She was doing everything. She was working herself into the ground to be able to fund my life, to train. So fast forward a little bit, I actually went back to college again. And this time it was funded by a third party. Was in the second year of computer science again. And a couple of months in, the third party actually told me that they pulled out. So they weren't going to fund my college degree. So I found myself in a bad situation again. I had to drop out for the second time. Again, embarrassing, and really sad, to be honest, because I thought that I was actually going to be able to get funded by this third party, but they pulled out. Again, it was really disappointing. My ma thought it was, even though my ma supported everything, all my decisions, she was really annoyed because she thought I was actually going to go back and do it this time. And I felt like I let her down, to be honest. It was something that, again, just put me in a bit of a rut, put me into the depression. But again, I just went back to martial arts. That's all I knew, to train. Relentlessly keep training. And I put all of my eggs into that basket. I went all in on MMA. While again, I was working in Belgium and Deliveroo. I started questioning myself then. Am I even smart enough? Can I even do any of this? When I look back in hindsight, these are all just signs that I was destined to do more. And my mind was always pushing me to try to do more. Regardless of the scenarios or the situations I was in, my mind was always telling me that I was destined for more. And I believe that was a sign from God, 100%, that these things aren't meant for me, or the timing isn't right for these things. Timing is all in God's hand. Whatever God wants for you, He will give to you in the right time. At that time, my mom was funding everything. She actually got a really bad back injury, which put her out of work. So she wasn't even able to make money anymore. So that point between 2018, 2019, we were the brokest we've ever been. 100%. We had no money. Literally, it was very bad. We got to a stage where literally had no money in the bank. There was nothing there because my ma couldn't work. And I knew something had to change. I knew I had to get a job properly at that point, because all I was doing at that point was just training. All I was doing was training full time, putting everything into training and still trying to find ways to make money. But I wasn't actually working anywhere. I didn't have a full-time job, so I didn't have consistent money coming in. At that point, I got my first proper job. I've had many other jobs before that, like I said, here and there, a job at Deliveroo, a job in a couple of shops, cafes, but this was my first full-time job and something I actually was passionate about. And it was in a computer repair store, and that changed everything for me. My boss, Colin, literally allowed me to work on an E-team as the CEO, and I seen everything about business, day-to-day operations, how to manage tasks on a daily basis, how to manage employees, how to manage multiple juggling plates, how to manage everything as a CEO. I learned so many lessons on an E-team, and how to treat people, how to treat your customers. There was so many lessons I learned on an E-team, not just how to repair computers, repair phones. It was actually how to run a business. He was showing me all of this for a full year. He was my first proper mentor in life and in business. Someone actually showed me not only how to run a business, but how to think like a businessman. And that's where things started to click for me. That was the moment where I was like, right, with the lessons that he's taught me, I can do anything here. So after a year of working in Colin's place in their computer repair store, I decided, right, I'm going back to college. I have to do it. Not because I needed a job or I even wanted a job in computer science. It was just a chapter that I needed to finish. I wouldn't have been able to live with myself if I didn't finish that chapter off. And I knew it was going to be difficult and I knew it was going to be hard, but I funded my own way through university this time. I didn't rely on handouts from third parties or anything like that. I funded my own way through it. And I'm going to be honest, it was really difficult. There was many times where I was thinking those thoughts again, oh, just drop out, no one cares. But I said, no chance. The only reason why I'm here is from me to actually finish this chapter, to say I done it, to close it off and say I actually went back and done it, no matter what. And I done it. And I graduated in the end of 2023 with my bachelor's degree in computer science. Really hard, many moments where I was contemplating dropping out again. But like I said, I stuck it through and I graduated. And at that point, I was thinking, do I get a job now? I became so fascinated with nerd computer science, cyber security, and ethical hacking that I was actually thinking, maybe I do want to get a job in this. I really, really liked it. But again, I knew I wanted more. I was around that stage, let's say mid 2023, I came across the rent-to-rent business model. And that changed everything how I saw property. Because when I worked for Colin, I was actually managing his Airbnbs. I was cleaning them, I was checking guests in, I was helping with the operations. And I saw something that I was really interested in, that area of property, the whole systems involved in it, everything involved in Airbnb. I was really interested, but I just didn't know how to do it. I thought I had to do it like him and everyone else. I had to own a property, and I obviously didn't have the money to buy a property. So at that point, I didn't know what to do. But in 2023, when I discovered rent-to-rent, I was like, this is it. This is my ticket to getting into property. This is the business that I'm going to go all in on. So there was no buying, there was no massive deposits or loans involved, there was no mortgages. There was just controlling the property, the correct strategy and execution. And to be honest, I became obsessed. I was obsessively watching content, videos on YouTube, on Instagram, looking up Reddit forums. I was trying to do as much research and consuming of information as possible. And at the start, that was great because I actually learned some basics. But it became more of a hindrance down the line because months after all this research, nothing changed. I wasn't even a step closer to getting my first property. And that's the biggest mistake I see people making in this industry. They overconsume content and get analysis paralysis. They end up convincing themselves, oh, this is too hard. This is not something I can do. As a result of overconsuming information and content. The biggest thing you can do in this is take action. That's it. The person who takes action over the person who overconsumes content wins every time. And that's what I done. Eventually, I got to a point in 2023 where there was so many events happening that I decided something had to change. I found out my mom had cancer. I just finished my college degree and didn't know if I would need to get a job or what I was going to do. And my son was just born. So 3 major things that happened that I decided something needs to change here. I actually have to just go after this business that has been in my mind for months now. And look, I tried to do it in Ireland, but the regulations didn't make sense. They didn't allow me to do it. So the next best place for me was Dubai. Because I traveled there a lot. I trained there, it's somewhere that I loved and I always wanted to do Airbnb because I've stayed in many Airbnbs there, but I just didn't know how to do it. But now that I had the rent model, I saw the potential for it in Dubai. So I made the decision. I was booking a one-way flight and I was going all in. Around this point, 2 years ago, start to mid-April, I got my first deal. I went over, set up my mainland LLC, set up the business, got all things legally structured correctly, became a resident, got my visa of Dubai, and I just put all my eggs in that basket. There was no looking back. I literally put everything in and didn't look back. There was no plan B. And like I said, this point 2 years ago, I bought my first property in downtown. The thing about it, at that point, I didn't even know how to run the numbers correctly. I had comparables off of Airbnb to see what our units were making in the area, but I didn't know how to run the numbers to make sure I was actually going to make enough profit for the unit to take on. I was just so excited, didn't run the numbers, but I knew this is what I needed to do. Got the keys to my first property in April 2024. And I didn't just rent the place completely unfurnished. I actually bought out another operator, so it was a decent deal. It came turnkey. All the furniture was there, and obviously I was paying for some of it, but it meant I was just able to get my first property up and running like that. And that was huge to me. It was so exciting. And look, it was a massive risk, but I remember thinking, when I got those keys, I remember thinking to myself, this is it. This is the start of something big. But straight away, problems. Because I was managing this from back in Ireland. And you can imagine, there's a 3 to 4 hour time zone difference. I had no one on ground to deal with any issues. Literally, from the first booking, there was issues. But the first booking that we got, the previous operator never connected the washing machine up. The pipes are never connected up. So when you turn on the washing machine, the place got completely flooded. And I was freaking out. I remember getting that call from the guest, not knowing what was going on. It was, I think, about 1 a.m, and I got a call. And I was thinking, what's going on here? The guest sent me all the videos to WhatsApp and I was like, oh my God, this is a disaster. What am I going to do? It was literally chaos. I tried to pull in some favors from one or two people I knew over here, specifically the agent who actually got me the deal. He helped me as quickly as he possibly could. We got the situation dealt with the next morning. We helped, clean up the property, make sure all the water and the flood was gone. But the guest was really annoyed. And think about it, if you go to an Airbnb, you're going with a family trip. It might be the only trip you get throughout the year with your whole family. And the first night, the whole place is flooded up to your ankles in water. Even some of your clothes and your suitcase is wet. It's not a good look. So what I done was, I refunded the guest for that night, complete refund. And I got them a $150 voucher to a really nice restaurant nearby in downtown. And that helped me so much. Not only was the guest, happy with that, he left a 5-star review. Just think about how disastrous that was and could have been with the bad review I could have got. That taught me something. In that moment, I learned something. It's not all about how amazing the experience is, because more than likely, you're going to have some issues. You're going to run into some issues with the guest, one way or another, whether it's something as big as this, or even something like we can't access the Wi-Fi. There's going to be issues somewhere during a guest stay. It's not going to be issue free. What the guest cares about the most is how quickly you can solve those problems and make them feel heard and special. Because I dealt with that so quickly and I was so apologetic, and obviously the remedies that I put in place with the refund and the voucher for the family, he was absolutely over the moon. And I got my first 4-star review as a result of that. So that was a massive lesson for me in the short-term rental space. Here's the thing, I started in the low season of Dubai. So for months, there was no profits coming in. I was wondering, how am I gonna cover the rent? How am I gonna cover all the bills? Because I started at one of the worst points in the year. So there's cash flow stress, guest issues because I didn't have the right systems in place, and even landlords pulling out deals that I was looking to take on. And I'm gonna be honest, I was sitting there many a times at home thinking, did I make the wrong decision? Is this even gonna work out? But every single problem made me sharper. It made me be able to solve that problem that much better. And I didn't let them problems happen again. I built systems, SOPs, and everything around making sure those problems didn't arise again. I hired virtual assistants and I stopped acting like somebody trying Airbnb and started acting like an actual business owner. In terms of scaling then, I got my second property at the end of August 2024. I made sure I got myself through the low season, learned all the lessons as I possibly could to get myself through that period and capitalize on any opportunities that I had. And once the profits started rolling in, I got my second property. And then we started scaling to 5 to 10, and now we're at 25 in the space of 2 years. And they're between Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and the UK. And the truth is, people only see this part. People see these views. People see, the environments that I'm in, the business class flights. They don't see the pressure. They don't see the constant stress. They don't see the losses and the failure. They don't see the daily doubt that goes on in my mind. But that's what builds you as a business owner and as a person. As they say, pressure makes diamonds. If you don't have constant pressure to perform to the best of your abilities, how do you ever expect to reach that bar?